Hi guys, so today for our chosen topic, we've chosen food webs, and it's presented by myself, Taylor Kearns, and Em Hickleton.
So the context of today's lesson, our chosen year level is 5-6. We have planned the lesson to go for about 60 minutes, and the year level achievement standard for this year level is to analyse how structural and behavioural adaptations of living things enhance their survival and predict and describe the effect of environmental changes on individual living things. Later on in the presentation, I'll be discussing the students' prior knowledge of this topic. Our learning intention is, today we are going to use our knowledge on food webs. As a class, we will first create our own food web. Each person will be a different animal and you'll have to figure out the order of the food chain. After this activity, we'll all split into smaller groups where we will play the food chain game and show our understanding from previous lessons and what we have learnt today.
So the success criteria for this lesson will be, for success criteria 1, I can create a food/web chain with my peers. Success criteria 2, I will confidently share my understandings I have learnt to my group. Success criteria 3, I can offer my opinion on the food web/chain my group creates. Success criteria 4, I successfully worked within my group and class in different activities. Success criteria 5, I understand and learnt about all the different food chains and food webs that I created today. And the teaching strategies that we'll use throughout the lesson plan is setting goals. So that's through success criteria and our learning intentions. And it just helps students further understand what they have to do throughout. Questioning, so especially open-ended questions, which will broaden their understanding and also challenge. Explicit teaching, which once again is like offering the information that they need and what's expected of them, so goals as well. And then collaborative learning, so working in groups and as a class to reach the final product of the activities.
The learning outcomes of our lesson is to successfully work as a class to create their own yarn model of a food chain or web, whatever you like to call it. Work in smaller groups offering their own knowledge and supporting peers throughout the allocated card game. Gain a deeper understanding of food webs through modelling and applying their knowledge in a game with peers. And lastly, talk through their thought process when positioning a particular living thing on their food web or chain. In regards to the Victorian curriculum, our strand is biological sciences, and the substrand for that is living things have structural features and adaptations that help them survive in their environment. The Vic curriculum capabilities are critical and creative thinking and personal and social. So an explanation of those are understanding of thinking processes and an ability to manage and apply these intentionally, and skills and learning dispositions that support logical, strategic, flexible, and adventurous thinking. And for personal and social is working effectively in teams and develop strategies to manage challenging situations constructively.
So how our lesson relates to the cross-curriculum priority of sustainability. Sustainability is displayed in our modelling activity as we discuss the effects that extinction has on the food web. In the introduction, the students have revised both endangered species and extinction, meaning that they have prior knowledge to the concepts and it's fresh in their mind. So how extinction actually can relate to sustainability. An individual's sustainable practice can impact species in their habitat. For example, plastic waste that is that isn't disposed of properly can pollute waterways and can kill marine animals, which over time can lead to extinction and also have faster impacts on those animals already endangered. How does our lesson display constructivism? So the categories that the requirements to meet constructivism that we've come up with is active participation is expected from learners, the environment is democratic, interaction and student-centered activities are featured, and students are given the opportunity to engage in the process of learning in which they are encouraged to take responsibility for themselves. For the first point, we see this in our lesson plan through the whole class activities which are included in the lesson require constant student interaction with, and then for the second point, within the activities, students are encouraged to challenge their peers and offer their own opinions as to why they may not agree. In the third point, the web activity is predominantly student-led and requires their understanding of the topic for it to be successful. And we feel like the bottom 2 points are quite similar, so we didn't feel the need to offer another point for that one.
So the introduction of the lesson will be sort of based around revision. So this lesson introduction will revisit topics covered in prior classes, such as herbivores, carnivores, and omnivores, as well as endangered and extinct species. So we will get the children to brainstorm using some revision questions, which are listed on the next slide. So some revision questions that may be used consist of questions that would use for assessment, and then questions that would be used for discussion to sort of understand where kids are at with the topic. So some of the questions are, what does a herbivore eat? What is the difference between endangered and extinct? What do omnivores eat? How do we describe an animal that eats meat? And what is one fact that you found most interesting that you learned in last week's class? So with the assessment questions, sorry, we'll just go back. The ones that aren't as open-ended sort of display assessment type questions, so we will understand how well the student understands that topic. And then the teaching strategy questioning is used for the open-ended questions so that it can sort of spark discussion and the students can display their understanding from what interests them the most. Yep. So this video is also just a refresher for the children. It is a food chain crash course, sort of just to reteach what they might not remember from the last class, and will be used as a warm-up activity or just to spark the brain to get it going so they understand what the class is on today. The safety requirements that we would go through with the class and to consider with the class is always using an inside voice, as there will be a lot of students standing up and getting interactive. No running around the class just to avoid any tripping or injuries. Remaining calm in group activities so that no one's talking over the top of each other and that they can run smoothly. Be aware of any classroom furniture or items that may implicate the safety of the lesson. So this activity that we are going to do today is going to require a lot of room, so we'll need to move lots of furniture out of the way so that children can get interactive and not have the danger of any furniture. And lastly, holding yarn at an arm level and only have the yarn be passed in front of students to prevent choking or getting tangled.
So for the development / applying part of the lesson, we'll be going over the activities, which are actually, it's one activity in 2 parts. The first one will be a food web modelling activity, and then the next one will be a card game where they apply their understanding that they've learnt both in the introduction, past classes, and from the food web modelling. The equipment that they'll need is scissors, yarn, living things, plants, omnivores, or carnivore picture necklace cards for food web modelling, which will be provided by the teacher, and we'll show it on the next slide. Food chain playing cards, which will be once again provided by the teacher. PowerPoint with food chain card game instructions, and interactive whiteboard or projector. So this is just an example of what the food web modelling animal necklace will look like. It'll just be a big picture card that will have the animal that they're given, and then the name of the animal, and then their diet. We've chosen to put like very simple words of just like the animal and then the diet very clearly along with the picture to assist students if there might be an EAL student in the class, because the picture will support them in understanding what the words say. So what the game would actually look like. So each pink dot is a student, and then the red lines are yarn. So there, for example, the animals that we have in this specific one is like a snake, a mouse, a fox, a squirrel, a rabbit, and a lot more. And so basically each student, there'll be 10 to 11 in each group, and they'll have their food chain necklace around them, and then there'll be the person who, the grain, or the plant species, would start with the yarn, and then the students would have a discussion as to who they think that the yarn from the grain should go to, and then the person who has the yarn will pass it to that person, and then they'll cut it and pass it to the other person if they think that there are more. And then eventually you'll end up, and it will show very clearly who the person at the top, the species at the top of the chain is, and then the one at the bottom, as all the strings will be leaving one person, and then all the strings will be going to one person. And they'll have a discussion about that as well. And then a teacher, once they've made their model, the teacher will just go around and they'll find one that they choose, just a species on that food web, and the teacher will just cut the yarn that student is holding to model what extinction could look like, and to show how a lot of the food web will fall apart from one animal being extinct. And then for part B, it's a food chain card game, where students, they'll be provided this card set every group of 2 to 4 students, and each card, there'll be a free choice, like it'll start with a plant, and then they'll have their turns to play their round, where they'll discuss what they think will go next.
So this slide will then be projected onto the screen, and it will just be there to support the students if they have forgotten how the game goes, and they'll be able to refer to it. And this is used to sort of direct the students and encourage them to lead the activity on their own, so the teacher doesn't need to be going around and assisting them. And that is another great way for assessment, because it displays if a student can lead their own activity with the knowledge that they've learnt from that lesson. The player with the most points win the game. So this will be a great way for us to know that the more cards that have been put down allows for more points to be gained by the team. And this shows that the children have enough knowledge to put the cards down and develop the food chain effectively. And once the game is finished, you'll go around and see if everyone has put down the same species at the top of the food chain, then they understand how it works.
And so then just for the lesson closure and revision, we'll just get the students to gather in the centre of the classroom on the floor, and we'll have an open discussion about what they've learnt today, and then things that they might have found interesting. And then also, especially, we will discuss the animals that the students, when they were modelling the food web, the species that they had at the top of their food chain and at the bottom. And if there were differing answers or opinions, we'll get the students to talk about that and discuss why they believe that species goes there. And then after that, finally, we'll just get them to do 2 stars and a wish, which is a great mode of assessment for teachers to refer to when they're developing a lesson in the future.
And lastly, the ways we have catered for diversity in this lesson is by providing all materials by the school to support those of a lower socioeconomic status that may not be able to afford or access these facilities. This just relieves stress of them and their families when coming to school, so that they know they don't need to provide anything and it's all provided by us. We have ensured students are grouped with other students that they are comfortable with and are at a similar learning capability. So this may mean when providing the game, a group that may be struggling with the topic, we can give them maybe less cards to start off with to create a smaller food chain. And then once we have recognized that they are more comfortable, we can then add more cards. We allow everyone to participate in a large group activity, so there's no leaders. So this activity, everyone gets an animal, so everyone gets a chance to play a part in the food web. And lastly, one more topic that I'll list is including revision activities / questions in the introduction to ensure that all students understand the topic of the lesson and everyone has a refresher so they are ready to go. And then lastly, the most important is these activities are both easily accessible for students with disabilities and don't require strenuous physical activity. That's our lesson. We hope you enjoyed, and we hope that it is something that you would like to use in your classroom.
Thank you.
Thank you.